much for letting me come and share some things about communication today. So when we think about it, think about while you're chewing. Somebody in your life, either right now or in the past, that you thought was a really amazing communicator. What were some of the traits that come to mind? And you can just shout them out, try not to spit rice across at the table, but what are some characteristics?
Keeping eye contact.
Eye contact, that's really good. What else? Affirmation? And what does that look like? Not in your head, okay. What else?
Patience and listening.
Patience in listening. Is that hard sometimes? Yes. And well, that's true, but that means you are always in agreement, right?
Trying to jump conversations at, like guessing what they're already saying. Speak freely.
Not allowing them to speak freely and kind of jumping in. Okay, that's a really, really important one. But that I'm hearing is kind of not good communication. So when you think of something that's really good, what else comes to mind? That they allow you to speak and they don't interrupt. Okay. Anything else? Objective, and what is that?
It means they say a lot in a very short amount of words and be very clear with clarity.
Like straight and to the point.
That is absolutely true. And that is one of my very favorite quotes from William Shakespeare. That is, brevity is the soul of wit, meaning that whatever you are writing or saying, you can probably reduce it by about 25%, get the exact same message across. But we don't, because sometimes we think that we're getting paid by the word. The more that I talk, the better it will be, the more people will listen. And that's really not true. So some of the things that we're going to try and talk about today are really just 4 very basic elements. And we'll do some general tips, what are some barriers, and then why effective communication is important. And part of it is because you all communicate every day. You're communicating with clients, you're communicating with other providers, you're communicating with each other. So these are just some probably reminders for a lot of you, but hopefully you'll get at least one little nugget that you can take back to your workplace and implement. So thinking about the 4 primary types of communication, which one do you think each of you use the most? Is it verbal, nonverbal, visual, or do you do written, which includes a lot of social media and texting? And emails, yes, yes. All written, okay, written. Anybody else? Not do as much written? Verbal, okay, all right. Visual, okay. So if I'm going to do a presentation, you're doing a presentation, and you are in love with numbers. You want to talk about all your pathway of hope successes, and you want to talk about everything that you've been doing, I don't know, with Red Shield and their food pantry. And you want to share the numbers and the graphs. You put it up there. This group does not care about numbers. They want to know, tell me the stories. Tell me who you've impacted. So using visuals kind of judiciously, knowing your audience, knowing what the presentation is supposed to communicate. So it's really thinking in terms of if you're doing a training, if you're doing a sermon or a lecture, what's that visual doing for you? If it's just because you wanted to put up a pretty picture, am I going to remember the picture or am I going to remember what you're saying? So verbal. When we think in terms of trying to buy ourselves time, how many of us end our sentences with, or right? Where you're almost begging the individual to agree with you. That, in a way, is manipulative, and we do it subconsciously. What other things do we do to drag out a thought? I don't know. And the thing is, when we're thinking about appropriate tone, are you harsh, unsure, or threatening? when you actually address someone. And sometimes, and I'll use my current boss as an example. She is the general secretary for ARC Command. Huge, huge job. And she has a face, I would say kind of an RBF face, kind of very, very harsh. Yet she is the kindest, gentlest, most caring person you could ever meet. But if you talk to her initially, you'll think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to speak to her again. What we have to do as communicators is think, if I'm meeting you for the first time, what is that impression that you're going to get of me? Because that's going to frame up how you think of me going forward. Listen actively, and that's kind of what David said. What does this look like? And what's the difference between reacting and responding when somebody is speaking? There is a difference, right? Silent is good, but reacting is when all of a sudden, pretend that you're doing customer service and somebody is yelling at you, you've got a client, you've got a person that's just not happy. If what you're trying to do is solve that problem, you're just reacting. You're jumping in, you're saying, what can I do? What can I do? I need to get this done. Versus just being silent. Let them finish. They're going to have to take a breath at some point. And when they do, that's when you can very quietly say, what can I do to make this right? Or whatever type of phrase that you use. When we respond, we tend to not act in such an emotional way. But when we're reacting, because I'm mad or you're frustrating me, it's usually not going to come out the way that we want it to. Does that make sense? Nonverbal. So we talked about eye contact. How do you feel when somebody doesn't look at you? Do you think that they might be, not lying, but do you think that they might be not totally forthcoming? Do we know if they have some other things going on in their life that would create a barrier between the two of you? We want, as communicators, we want to make sure that we are making good eye contact, yet not staring at a person, because that's super uncomfortable too. Very, very uncomfortable. Paying attention to body language. How many times do you think, thank you, Patrick Brown. When somebody sits like that, what does that seem to make people think? You're closed-minded. Sometimes it is. Sometimes a person is just cold. Yes. And sometimes it just means you need to prove something to me because I don't really believe what you're saying. All right. How about personal space? Do sometimes when you have a client or a coworker and you're making a point and they're getting closer and closer and closer and you're going, okay, whoa, buddy, I need you just to back up. We need to make sure that we maintain good personal space as well. Gestures. Sometimes people talk with their hands. I'm excited, so I want to gesture wildly. Sometimes what happens with that is I'm just paying attention to your arm gestures. I don't know if you're going to hit me, if you're just going to do something crazy. So just monitor that. And if you supervise people that do some of these things, what's the best way to coach them? It's to model the behavior that you want to see, because the more that you do that, they're just going to know, oh my goodness, this is a really good way of communicating. So I'm going to take this moment to go through some of the questions that came up on the survey that I think Prey sent out before this presentation. And I'm just going to read to you a couple of things that came up, because I want to make sure that we cover them. 1, professional communication for entry-level staff. And please, for the love of God, show people how to just reply in a mass email rather than reply all. Okay, we will do that. Yes, we'll do that. How do you maintain a poker face? I'm very expressive naturally. So let me ask a question. Is maintaining a poker face good all the time? No, and why is that? It can look like you're zoned out, that you're not engaged.
It could look like you don't understand what that other person's trying to explain.
Or you don't care.
You don't understand, you don't care.
Be allowing to letting that other person think that you are belittling him in his thinking or something.
Belittling him, okay. So all of those, poker face, threatening, that's right. Because then that can also lead into the whole staring down, which then becomes showdown. It's very aggressive, yes. So not a question, but what is effective communication? Often I use too many words trying to be polite. So what does that mean? When I'm saying, like, I'm sorry for interrupting you, I'm so sorry to bother you. And that in and of itself, if you think about it, is diminishing your importance, because you are important. I'm not bothering you. I want to talk to you for a very specific reason. It's, instead of saying, oh gosh, David, I'm so sorry to bother you, maybe it's, David, when you have a few minutes, can I talk to you about something? So that's because I had the wrong face on. Yeah, so I have to do it. Exactly. So I would come back again and say, David, when you have some time, when you have just a few minutes, can I talk to you about something? Not a big deal, but I need to talk to you. Okay? But that sorry piece always makes it sound as though, you know, you're second rate, and you're absolutely not. All right, so the visuals, you can all read this, but don't use them if they're not going to add value. And you know, probably 90% of what you do and you put on slides or that you present does make sense. So don't overthink it. Just make sure that things are very clear. Prey sends out a really great document for presentations that talks about font size, and don't use humongous sentences, and speak in bullets. All of these kind of things can make a huge difference. Consider your audience. Let's say if you're working with your teachers, we're going to do a training today. What's the best method? What do you think is going to work best for your group? It never hurts to ask. And even if you don't always get a response, that in of itself is kind of a response too, because then you can ask additional leading questions. Well, I'm thinking that we're going to do it as a Teams meeting. What do you think about that? Keep asking questions to get a good response. Written communications. This is actually my biggest pet peeve. We're so busy. Everybody is so busy. And I need to just type this out, or I'm angry and I need to get this information out. Read what you write. Please take 25 seconds. Proofread what you write. Make sure that there's no spelling errors. Use spell check. How many of you, if you're doing a Word document, use the review feature? It will check your grammar, it will check your spelling, and it will also allow you to see what grade level you're writing at. What is the preferred grade level for business communications? What's the optimum level? I'll tell you, it's 8th grade. And we just think that we want to write so involved and with lots of syllables, but 8th grade. And so when you go in and you actually look at the readability statistics, it'll tell you you're at the 12th grade reading level. You want it to be as low as possible. And it can make a difference. When you read your work out loud, how does it sound? Does it sound like the way that you talk? Does it sound like you're trying to be something perhaps a little different? Which is fine, but you don't know where that email is going next or where that document may be going next. So if Shannon thinks she's sending me an email and she's super casual, that's great. But if I have to do something with that information and I choose to forward it, the reader goes back and looks at who the original sender is. It might or might kind of backfire, but just keep that in mind. Structure content for clarity and readability. What does that mean? When I say organize your thoughts, when you're thinking about writing something, what does that look like? Do you do something like a mental outline? Do you have an intro, a body, and an ending? Do you just write, because I just want to get it done and then send it? What are some tips that each of you use? I write because I send it. Okay, and that's
Not always. I guess it depends who it's going to. If it's someone, like, since you were going to quick something,
right.
then I'm a little bit more casual, just ready to go. But if it's going to, like, a major or HR, or, like, an outside vendor, I'm much more thoughtful and make sure that it flows well and it makes sense.
Yes.
And it has a beginning and an end, instead of just like, hey, can you like this?
Yes. Beginning and end. And also, if you want somebody to respond to you, please include a due date. I would like your response by July 4th. If I don't hear from you by July 4th, I'm going to assume that you have no changes and I'm moving on, because you don't have the time really to keep going back and saying, oh, Patrick, did you look at that? No? Okay, well, I'll come back another week and hopefully you'll do something with it. You can also do things in your subject line. If you want an action required, I need you to take this survey by 5 o'clock today. And then if you don't get the responses, it's up to you, because sometimes you do want to give a little bit more grace because you know people aren't going to read this until Tuesday. But you do this a couple of times and people say, oh, I missed the deadline, can you still accept my information? 9 times out of 10 you probably can, and you will, because you're really kind. But you don't do it a couple times and people will get the message that I am not messing around. I do not put these dates in here because I'm just waiting around for a response. I need this because I need to do something. The things with communication, think in terms of, especially for work communication, you're communicating because you want something. You need something, you're communicating information, or you're asking for help, or you're asking a question. It's not just random things. So make it important and make it count. Any questions on that? Is this just moving forward without me touching these? Because I have not clicked at all, and okay. Verbal communication, so we've talked a little bit about it. It's my poor communication skills. I don't even know when the thing is moving. Practice active listening. Active listening are some of the things that we already mentioned. You know, nodding if you're kind of engaged. Are you not interrupting? So think in terms of the one for myself that comes through is during an interview. And sometimes if a candidate is just talking and rambling and babbling, I'm already thinking of that next question that I want to ask. And I'm just like ready to ask it. And that's the worst thing to do. And we really have to realize that we're all basically in the customer service business. We are here to help our residents, our clients, fellow employees, and we have to give them that space and that opportunity to share their information. Now that doesn't mean that you're not completely angry or you're very frustrated or you're just going out of your mind because it's taking so long to get to somewhere. At least let them speak their piece and then go ahead and jump in. Ask the clarifying questions. What I have found in a lot of times when we're having conversations or you're even having a meeting, people will be nodding, no one says anything, and no one asks any questions. And so I walk away thinking, oh my gosh, what a brilliant presenter I am, because it just must be so clear. And then 10 minutes later, you walk over to the bathroom or you walk over to where people are standing and did you know, what did that actually mean? And that's the key. Figure it out. But from our perspective, if somebody looks like it's not making sense, Louis, what do you think I'm talking about? Exactly. So we want to make sure that when we're talking, think in terms of what is it that people might be or not be understanding. And it never hurts just to say, you know, Morgan, what do you think about that? Is there anything that really doesn't make sense? Then that will either stimulate another comment or it'll be, no, I got it. Minimize fillers and jargon. Don't assume familiarity. And I think especially like in homeless services, there's lots of different acronyms. I mean, think about if you didn't work for the Salvation Army Orange County, would you know what AES is? You might not know what PSH is. You might not know POH. And we just do it all the time. It just becomes part of our own vernacular. So think again of your audience and modify what you're saying. And sometimes slow it down, and that can work too. We don't have time to do the telephone game. Wow, I don't have time to do a whole lot else. The telephone game, modified on this, when you do a meeting, because you all know how to do the telephone game. Shannon says something, she whispers it to Patrick. Patrick goes to David. You go all the way around, and by the time it gets to Naveen, totally different message. Try it with visuals. The next time you do it, try it with visuals where Shannon picks a sentence. Maybe it's, you won the lottery and you're super excited, so you have to make some wild gestures. You whisper it to me, okay? Everybody is standing in a line. Their backs, they're all facing this direction. She tells me what I need to act out. I act it out. Then I tap this person on the shoulder. That person turns around, looks at me. I act it out. They do the same thing. And by the end, you want to know if that person down at the end has any idea what they were actually acting out. It's hilarious, but it's a great way to frame up what communication can really look like. Oh. Nonverbal, maintaining good posture. Slouching usually seems to indicate that you're kind of bored, you're kind of tired. We've already talked about crossed arms. Might not mean anything. Smile genuinely. People know when you're fake. Use gestures appropriately. Don't let it detract from your message. This is, pretty basic. Is there any other nonverbals that kind of come to mind that either are really good? Yes.
One thing I learned is if you're a manager that has a desk, if you really want to talk to somebody in a sort of one-on-one, don't sit behind your desk. Come out and sit outside with the person.
That is a great point. Did everybody hear that from Patrick? Come around your desk. And sometimes, like even at AES, just do a walk with me type of meeting. Just walk. We can just walk and talk. It's a little bit more casual. It kind of makes people feel a little bit more relaxed. But office, that's a great point.
Same with your clients too. That's why all the interview rooms have round tables, so you can.
Yes. Very strategic. Written, I think we've talked about this. Please proofread. Have somebody else read your work. Read it out loud. When you read it out loud and you practice the cadence with semicolons, periods, et cetera, you will notice that sometimes your sentences are going on a little long. Once you start cutting out the passive verbs, you can reduce your word count by about 25% on average. Minimize, reply all. I think I've got one slide on that. Read whenever possible, even if you're reading books on your phone, on your iPad. The more that we read, it just helps with our vocabulary. It helps figure out sentence structure. It helps also to figure out how does a writer have a beginning, a middle, and an end to an article or to a story. Grammarly, there's a lot of different ways that you can improve your writing, and I'm sure, and I think Morgan even alluded to it with ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a great way of helping you self-correct and improve your writing. You could create a document, put it into ChatGPT, say, I am a case manager. I need to write this letter on behalf of a nonprofit. Need to make sure that it's very clear. In less than 500 words, use minimal jargon. It will either rewrite it for you or it will make it better, and it will help you over time really improve your writing. Okay, so how is it when I reply all? Why do we do this? Why do we do it? Thank you. Somebody says something, send something out. Tomorrow you will all get to be off at 3 o'clock. And then, thank you. That is so nice. It's because we're hurrying, we're in a rush, we're just not taking the time. So it's hard to see, but I think most of you know that when you're replying, just don't hit reply all. Hit just to the sender. Then it only goes back to me versus the 20 other people that are sitting in this room or that the email was addressed to. I would also encourage you, and I believe here in Orange County, you have to do about 16 hours worth of training in the course of a year. If you check out Prior Plus, the e-learning classes, there's a whole bunch of 4-minute, 5-minute, 7-minute email etiquette courses. You can take them, take the quiz, super helpful, very, very easy. Social media communication tips, and this is really, not as much business related, but I think the thing to really remember is that once it's out there, you can't take it back. So if you're posting anything that might be potentially misinterpreted or misunderstood or doesn't even make sense, especially as it relates to your job, just be very mindful of what you're doing. Use your hashtags really wisely. I know people do a lot of things to Instagram or LinkedIn. Monitor and respond to comments promptly. Be very polite when you're doing that because, again, what you're posting is going to be a representation of you. And just choose the right platform. Challenges. Oh my goodness. So what are some of the, what do you think are some of the roadblocks to clear communication?
Different personalities, like they think differently.
Different, right. Personalities, culture. It could be language barriers. It could be I've never worked in human services before, so I don't really understand all of the different things that a case manager has to go through. And just, yes?
I think personally, so like my wife likes to speak the emotional language, so it's to learn where she's coming from emotionally rather than content driven. So I think people are like that in general too.
That's very, very true. And that actually is one of the top keys to clear communication anyway, kind of knowing who you're speaking with, who you're working with, and where they're coming from, because it's less about you as the communicator, right? It's more about the receptor and what they're going to hear. And then misinterpretation of tone. And what I mean by that is you can say something, and I could say the same thing to Shannon, I could say it to David, I could say it to Patrick. And David is going to think that I am the meanest person in the world. Same thing. It's the exact same thing that I said. But it's the tone. It might be the fact that I never talked to David, so all of a sudden he's wondering, why is she talking to me in the first place? So we just have to think, again, you always have to be a couple steps ahead, I guess is what I'm trying to say when it comes to communication, because you just never know how your audience is going to receive the information. This is pretty much no-brainer information. Why is communication so important? It helps build trust. It helps build stronger relationships. It really allows you to collaborate better with your team. If I know that these three folks here are the subject matter experts in Tustin Ranch lunches, well, these are going to be my go-to people, and I'm going to trust them, and I'm always going to want to work with them. It reduces information misinterpretation, and it's going to improve your client, your resident, your beneficiary, your colleague satisfaction. And there's fewer mixed messages, too. So any questions on any of that? Are you sure? Okay. Anyway, so I don't print any paper anymore because I know that people end up leaving it behind. But what I did was I created a sticker that you could put either on your badge, or you could put it on your phone, or you could put it somewhere, and it's got the communication tips. These are the four categories, and yeah. Okay, yeah. If you put it on your forehead, though, you're not going to be able to read it. James is going to have to read it to you, and then that's going to be bad communication. So, but make sure you get one on your way out. Okay.
But if I put mine on my forehead, David could read it.
The two of you will be just a great communications team. You really will be awesome. When you do that, let me know. I'll come back. I'll come back. Exactly. That'd be perfect. You know, Miguel, whatever it takes, I am here to serve you. Yes. All right. So, what's kind of one thing that you learned today that was either interesting, surprising, or just kind of a good refresher? Anyone?
Cut out the jargon.
Cut out the jargon. Okay. Proofreading. Huge. Huge.
Be mindful of what I write to people because it could be forwarded to someone else. I'm not good.
Yes. Okay. So on your table, there is a note card. And if you can just legibly write your name, everybody take a note card, take a pen. And on the note card, write your name and one thing that you're going to use right away. And maybe make a note to yourself, because I'm going to ask you to actually leave that card on the table and have praise collected. So we can kind of use it as a barometer to see if our communication kind of improves. Perfect.
I was like, oh, shoot, when you said collect, I was like, oh, I shouldn't hold us accountable.
I hate that accountability piece, huh?
One thing I learned, Renay's the best speaker there is.
Oh, you're very funny, very funny. And actually, what you're writing down helps me frame up kind of this presentation, because we are doing communication as one of the modules at the ARC in our 18 centers, so thank you for that. So here's something. Don't be this person. As a result of my poor communication skills, I like to insult people via text because I'm way too scared to actually say it to their face. Don't be that person. Always be very confident in what you're saying, in what you're writing, in what you're sharing, because what you have is so very important. And then I'll leave you with these two thoughts. One is James 1:19. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And like I said earlier from William Shakespeare, that brevity really is the soul of wit, that less is usually more. So I really appreciate your attention and for coming today. I know lunch is a huge draw, so anytime that you can actually stay and hopefully learn something, it's really great. But we all need people who are going to give us feedback. That's really how we improve, and that's a Bill Gates quote that's been around for years, because when he was testing all of his ideas, people were oftentimes very afraid to say, oh, this is not going to work. You know how sometimes, depending on a person's role, you think that you always have to agree with them or that they have the best ideas. His philosophy was always the exact opposite. I want you to tell me what I can do better, what we can do better. That's the only way that each of us are going to grow. So if you can take a picture of that QR code and complete the survey before you leave, we will wrap up. And unless anybody has any questions, Praise, did you want to kind of close this out?
Just want to say thank you to Renay for providing us with all this great information. So if you can give her a round of applause, thank you.